Let's talk a little bit more about judgmental forecasting. We just said that informed judgment by a single expert will be maybe wonderful in some aspects, but you do have the prejudices, the viewpoint of that person skewing the forecast. So a good idea is to go to multiple experts, if at all possible, to get them to talk to each other and look for points of consensus. There is a very well established methodology for doing this. It is called the Delphi method. You Americans, the word is not Delphi, it is Delphi. And what you have here is you are trying to make sure that one expert who is very loud or dominant or well respected is not going to hijack the entire conversation and impose his or her point of view on the others. So you have a written, or more recently sometimes a web-based connection with them, and you make their responses available to each other anonymously. You let them talk to you if you want anonymously, but you definitely mask their responses when you share them with the other experts, and then you do multiple rounds. Once you have summarized, asked for validation, confirmation, points of assent, dissent, you've asked for additional information based on what the first round gave out. You just sent out an entirely new set of questionnaires. Your experts come back to you with their answers to that. Now, typically, this is going to take either something from 3 to 6 rounds to either converge with most of your experts agreeing, yeah, the next big earthquake in California is likely to happen in, let's say, 20 years, or it's going to polarize with a significant chunk of your experts saying it's going to happen in 5 years, and a significant other group saying, no, that's too early, it's 20 years. But even with polarization, you have gotten a wealth of information by mining experts with different opinions and making sure that they have a mediated, civilized discourse over a long period of time by studying each other's responses and then coming back with their own minds having changed, or with their own questions to dig deeper as to why their opinions are so different. So this is a truly beautiful method if you have access to these experts, if you can pay them for what they're doing, and if you have the time to be waiting for all of this to be taking place, as well as the resources to be recompiling data, coming up with some nice visual summaries for those experts to not have to take hours wading through each other's responses, but just kind of see, here's the landscape of the responses that came the last time. Again, if you can afford this and if you know how to do it, this is a great forecasting tool. I have seen applications that were called Delphi method that truly showed a lack of understanding of what the method entails. This is not a very quick questionnaire and then just fly by night. The answers are out there. Let us know if you want to respond. Oh, nobody responded, and here's the end results. This is something that's going to take months and months typically. And here's an example I found, a truly beautiful one. The National Drug Abuse Policy, Delphi, where they went through 5 sets of questionnaires, and this one is just explaining a part of this. Goes on pages and pages like this, where it shows that they were getting information and then validating that information, looking for consensus, and also asking for new information on the basis of the information gathered in the earlier rounds. For instance, the first 2 rounds asked what are the most important issues right now about drug abuse in the United States. And then going into the 3rd and 4th and 5th questionnaires, they were asking, okay, so what should be the policies to deal with these issues, and rank them and give us some feedback on how stringent they should be, and so on and so forth. So just kind of developing over time. The final qualitative or judgmental tool that is actually often used very often with new technology or new product introduction is if you have nothing exactly like that product before, so you cannot really use it something like a time series, but if you have reasonably similar products. I'm sure you're all familiar with the product life cycle. Products tend to have very low demand in the beginning that kind of grows during introduction a little bit and then grows a lot during their growth phase, and then they kind of mature. They go into a leveling off where maybe your sales are just people replacing what they already have, but you're not really entering new markets. And then there is a decline as that technology or product is abandoned and humans move on to some other way of filling that need. So this is very well known, and the shape of this curve is very different for different products. Imagine how this would look for something like VHS, and imagine how it would look for something like refrigerators. We're still in the maturity phase, not in the decline phase of refrigerators. So if you have a product that is similar to your own and you spend some time looking at that product's life cycle curve of how long it took to get established, how fast was it, what was driving people's reactions, and then how fast was it in the growth phase, and then how long did its maturity last, and so forth. Typically, you can form an analogy and say my new product is likely to follow this curve also. So right now, a lot of companies who are trying to introduce smart watches are doing exactly this by looking at trends for the introduction and growth phases of sometimes going as back as personal computers or laptops, but most definitely looking at tablet growth, at smartphone growth, and trying to project how the watches are going to be, assuming that those technologies are similar and will follow different curves. So the trick here is to come up with a product or a number of products or a service or a number of services that are reasonably similar to what you're trying to launch, and then extrapolate from that. And there's been very, very successful examples of this in real life. Sometimes this gets so good that you can actually build a quantitative model out of this, such as the base model, and then use that for kind of a quantitative life cycle analogy forecasting, if you will. Now here are a number of situations where I'm asking you to think of qualitative forecasting methods. Don't hesitate if you think in some cases you might come up with quantitative. Also, you might say, I would use this data and do a quantitative forecast in which case. But propose qualitative and or quantitative forecasting methods. This is a test question type I like to use. I will give you some context and ask you, what would you need to forecast here? And how would you go about forecasting it? And you don't have to read my mind. There are great answers. There are, okay, convince me, and I'll buy you. I'll buy what you're saying answers. There are some that just definitely do not fit. For the first one, for instance, role of technology in education. This is a perfect. It is long-term, 30 years. It's aggregate over all education, all technologies. So for this, you really need something like Delphi to go to people who are education experts, to go to people who are technology experts, have them give answers to your first instrument, share the results, do several rounds back and forth to try to enter a convergence, enter some kind of a consensus. If you said, I will go to my teachers and to my vendors who sell technology products to schools, that would be a grassroots approach, and that would be absolutely fine if especially you do not have access to your higher level experts and or the time to do something like Delphi. You probably would not, though, go to your students and say, what do you think you'll buy? Because in some cases, the customer is really ignorant, and a market survey is not the way to go.